I want to talk about this because, this even goes to ground game. And I know you guys are working hard with all these initiatives and trying to get out the vote in general. We keep hearing that Texas is purple, Texas is going purple. Obviously last year and even in 2016, they said Texas was going blue. Texas is
Yeah.
going blue. And obviously that was all fictional. My question is, as being someone that lives on the ground and, you've ran 2 congressional races, you've talked to many people on all sides of the aisle. What do you feel like Texas is right now?
I actually think Texas is progressing towards the right end of the spectrum. If you look at the, and I want to say that 2018 was probably the first election cycle where that was even close to being a possibility, close. And like you said, the first time that we had a statewide candidate since 1994 truly challenge and get very, very close to winning a statewide seat was 2018. And no infrastructure building had occurred prior to that. And I want to remind people that in Arizona and Georgia, which Mike and I are so inspired by, work has been going on there for 10 years to change those states. It didn't happen in 1 election cycle or 2 election cycles or even 3. But slowly but surely, you start to see this movement and this pattern going in the right direction. Biden, for losing some ground in South Texas, he still won South Texas. He still did remarkably better than Hillary. He actually shaved the margins in Texas, which is a good thing. No, we didn't pick up any seats in 2020, which sucks. Like, we didn't pick up state house seats. We didn't pick up congressional seats. We didn't lose any margin, or we didn't lose any ground either. We didn't.
Yeah, but the question is, sorry to interrupt. The question is, Julie, is that, Biden didn't do that, but, Biden's 79 years old, whether he runs again or not, that's time will tell.
Yeah.
The question is, if you put a different person on there, whether it's Harris or, oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this kind of gets me upset to say these people's names because I'm not a fan of either one of these people. Whether you put Harris or Buttigieg on there, could it get worse? Because, Biden might have done it, and I don't think he was a great candidate at all, but he did shave some of those margins. But does that mean another candidate could do it like a Harris or Buttigieg?
That's hard to say. I honestly don't know. But what I do know is we don't have enough Democrats in the state of Texas to win. We have a third of our registered. Well, because a third of our registered voters don't vote. But I can tell you,
what is all this talk, Julie, of all these people that are moving from California to Texas? Are these people that are not progressive?
Yep.
So they're all Republicans then.
We have a lot of Republicans moving from California to Texas. There's a reason they're moving out of California. They don't like California. But I will say this, we found, even anecdotally, or I shouldn't even say anecdotally, but at least early returns for us. We did our first signature petition to decriminalize marijuana in Austin. We gathered those signatures starting, I guess, in late June, early July. We found that this is amazing, 60% of people who signed our petition were under the age of 35. About 10% are not even registered to vote or registered to vote at their current address. So that's an opportunity to get folks registered to vote. And they give us their address so we can follow up with them. But third, there was an election in November, and it's a Texas constitutional amendment. It's the lowest turnout election that we have in any election cycle, a November odd year election. And if you took our signers and compared it with the general electorate of Austin, our non-voters and our infrequent voters, those are people who only voted once out of the last 3 elections or never in the last 3 elections, were 300%. They turned out at 300% the general electorate of Austin. So they were 3 times as likely to turn out, and did turn out in a odd year November election. So we're not talking about the good voters. We're talking about people who don't vote. So then, at least preliminarily, it's looking like we're getting some non-voters, and they defeated a ballot initiative that would have been a very, very pro-police ballot initiative. So, and it lost overwhelmingly. So that's good.
Well, then how is this voter legislation that just came out? I know Florida did their own deal which is
Yeah.
a travesty, but that's
Ugh.
par for the course down there too. Anyways, regardless, how is all this voter registration, all these issues,
Yeah.
and they're doing this all over the country. How is that going to affect Texas and what you're doing with ground game?
Well, what's really interesting is, we'll see eventually what happens. But a lot of people are thinking this is actually going to harm Republicans' abilities to vote, because a lot of it centers around absentee voting. Republicans vote absentee more than Democrats do. And so they had an article in the paper, I think yesterday in San Antonio. The election official there is so frustrated with the new law. She's like, I'm getting calls from, we can send out an application to vote by mail if they request it. Now, if it's not requested, you can't send out applications anymore. But she's like, I'll get a call from a wife. It's like, I need to get an application to vote by mail. Great. What's your name? What's your address? And she's like, can you send one to my husband as well? She's like, no, I can't. I face a state jail felony if I do. But if your husband can get on the phone, I can. Now, how does that make sense? I mean, that's not voter integrity. It's not. I really think that in the end, this is going to really impair the ability of older voters who in Texas tend to be Republican by a much wider margin. I think it's going to hurt Republicans.
Okay, I'm just saying, I think they were trying to hurt Democrats because of the pandemic, because of, you saw in Texas, I saw in Florida, that about 80% of the people voted mail in, both of these states because of the pandemic, and most people weren't going out to vote.
I think in the first primary that happened, by the time November rolled around, I don't think because we had the ruling by the Attorney General in the Texas Supreme Court that you can use the pandemic as an excuse to vote by mail. So I think actually our in-person was much higher than our absentee by November.
But was that because they screwed a lot of people? Remember in Travis County they had all those issues with the drive-through over in Houston. They had those issues.
That was Houston, yeah.
Drive-through, yeah.
So a lot of the things that they did in Houston to make it easier for folks to vote, some of them were left alone, but things like a 24-hour center, they've shut that down. They're not going to be able to allow 24-hour voting centers. But that only, again, really helped police officers, firefighters, and it was created to help law enforcement, firefighters, and people who work at hospitals, shift workers, basically, who get off at 11 p.m. and need to vote on their way home. And so, and truth be told, and every vote is important, even people who, especially people who are working shifts. For the most part, very few people were voting in the middle of the night or in those really late hours. I want to say it was maybe overall, maybe 1,000 people voted. Those 1,000 votes definitely count, but it may not be the thing that they think. It may not have the impact that they think it's going to have.
Fair. When you talk about shift workers, personally, I'm just thinking about somebody that works at Burger King and McDonald's. But yeah, I don't think that would really be needed for 24 hours.
Yeah.
I'm
thinking of the people who work like the 7 to 7 or 11 to 11 sort of shifts. They're on for 24 hours or full 12 hours,
Honestly, if they just keep it longer, as many, day wise, and they just keep regular hours for a lot of days, I think that would be sufficient. You know what I mean?
Well, and truth be told, there are some voter suppression. There are a lot of voter suppression elements to what they passed. The poll watching is incredibly onerous. And there's nothing that an election official or an election judge can do to get somebody out short of calling law enforcement. So if somebody is creating a disturbance, the only person who can ask a poll watcher to leave is law enforcement. So that is definitely meant to intimidate voters. And I'm sure we're going to have poll watchers who intimidate voters. And in these small towns where the sheriff or law enforcement could care less if, some person of color is voting, they're not going to show up to make a poll watcher leave. So yeah, I don't want to minimize how horrific, some of these provisions are in our law, but I do think some of them are going to be equally as disruptive for the Republican Party.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit on the edges. 2022 is obviously going to be a bloodbath year for Democrats. Anybody that doesn't believe that is either hypnotized in a trance or maybe they're on some heavy medication. Why do you feel like 2022 is being shaped as the bloodbath for the Democrats? And also, how do you feel like it could be tampered down, or do you feel like that's kind of gone because Build Back Better is pretty much done and the voting rights bill is not going to get passed? Let's be honest with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's problematic that Biden waited a year to even address the Senate on changing the filibuster rules for this. It's been very, very disappointing. So I'm with you. I think we're going to lose the House majority and likely the Senate. You know, not the Senate majority. We don't have a Senate majority. The slim 50-50 that we had in the Senate. Well, let's be honest. Do we really even have 50-50?
No.
Do we only have 48? So, you know, how can we avert that? Delivering to people. That would be the easiest way to do it. Deliver some huge wins for the American people. Highly unlikely, but it could happen. You know, I've been hitting the drum as loudly as I can here in Texas because I keep saying it's all hands on deck, including our safe Democrats. The folks who have been drawn into safe Democratic seats, who sit on millions of dollars of cash, never do field, don't invest in their communities, write pittance of checks to other candidates that they think are sure wins. That has got to stop. This whole mindset that I'll fundraise for the DCCC, but I'm not going to fundraise for infrastructure building in my state.
Yeah.
And there have been, you know, a couple of our congresspeople, and I'm sure if I looked at all of the campaign finance reports, we'd find that probably millions of dollars have left the state of Texas and gone straight to the DCCC. That's not helping the state of Texas. It isn't. And there are some organizations on the ground doing this infrastructure building. We have amazing youth-led nonprofits that are on college campuses here in Texas doing very good work of voter registration and then turning out students to vote. You know, I can think of 5 off the top of my head: Workers Defense, JOLT, MOVE, Texas Organizing Project, Deeds Not Words. Our safe Democrats should be investing in these organizations because they're doing the infrastructure building in Texas. They're doing the work for these congressional leaders that are not doing the work. So I think that's one way to mitigate. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. I feel like I'm, you know, banging my head against the wall talking about this, and it's not really getting the attention of anybody. But when you have $6 million in your campaign account and you're not willing to run field, because you're going to get elected, and it doesn't matter if your turnout is 50% when it should be, you know, 70%. That 20% that don't show up, that's part of our non-voting problem.
Yeah. Well,
but
not
you put
even
those,
just that.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
you put that across the state, it adds up.
Well, it's not even just the safe Democrats in the House and the Senate. It's also in the ones that aren't up for re-election in the Senate. It's a lot of, you know, where is Joe Biden? Where is Kamala Harris? Where is these representatives from the administration going to states talking about the infrastructure bill, talking about the American Rescue Plan? They're nowhere to be found. Yeah, it's really sad.
You know, going back to South Texas one more time, I talked to a state house rep at the end of the first session we had. I think it was the end, like back in May of last year. And he said, Julie, you know why Greg Abbott and John Cornyn and Ted Cruz do really well in South Texas? He's like, and he goes, and you know, top of ticket will be a Republican, but then all the way down the ticket will be, and he's talking about statewide seats, will be Democrats. He's like, because Greg Abbott shows up down here, Ted Cruz shows up down here, John Cornyn, they always come to our cities. Nobody else, Democrats never come here who aren't from here. Yeah. And he goes, and that's a problem. And there's a tremendous amount of loyalty. If somebody sees you coming to Laredo or to McAllen or to Mission, Texas, he's like, that means so much to us because we are never visited by people. So yeah, if Biden wants to win South Texas, he needs to get down there and make several appearances. There are a lot of cities that would welcome him with open arms.
What Texas progressives should people listening to this look out for? I know the big talk is Jessica Cisneros, but besides her, any other progressives running in Texas that people should look out for?
Actually, yes, we are working with a group called Lupe votes. And
Yeah.
they're working to, so Texas 15, so really most of the congressional seats in Texas were shored up to be safe, either Republican or Democrat. But there is one now that is a swing district. It is Congressional District 15. And there is a woman who is running, I'm looking up her name, I don't know why, I'm blanking. I watched the candidate forum the other night. Congressional 15. Michelle is her first name, I do know that. I think it's Michelle, it's not Michelle Tremillo, who is it? Maybe it is Michelle Tremillo, but she's running for Congressional District 15, and she is fabulous. And she was actually picked by the folks in Texas 15 who are members of Lupe. Lupe is the workers' rights organization that was formed by Dolores Huertas and Cesar Chavez. So members in South Texas could pick who they wanted to run for Congress. And she is absolutely just such a ray of sunshine, incredibly progressive.
Michelle Valajari.
Thank you. Yes.
J.O.
Yep.
I suck at pronouncing names.
I know. Me too.
Valagio or something like that. I just looked it up because you said 15. So.
Yep. Hang on. I don't know why. Vallejo. Sorry, Vallejo. And you know what, Michelle? I apologize for that. Michelle Vallejo. She is absolutely wonderful, and she cares so much for the community. And she would be a huge improvement over the current congressman who's too scared to run in Texas 15. So he switched to the next congressional race because it was a safer Democratic seat. But it's just like you said, they want to retire or they're going to switch seats because they're too scared to run in something that might be close because they don't know how to run field and they don't actually know how to talk to constituents. They're great at talking to corporate lobbyists and corporate donors, but when it comes to actually talking to a real human being who lives in their district, it terrifies the living bejesus out of them. But not Michelle. She is wonderful. So I think she is one that people should keep an eye on. Obviously, Lloyd Doggett gave up his old seat. He was scared to run in that, so he's switching congressional races again. But Greg Casar in Texas 35 is a wonderful progressive. Claudia Zapata, who's going to run in Congressional District 21, she's a wonderful, wonderful progressive. So there are a number of progressives that are still running for races. Like I said, some of them are going to be much harder. They made Texas 21 a much more challenging district to win in if you're a Democrat. That's one that Wendy Davis ran in against Chip Roy. Texas 15 was made a little, I think it was borderline Republican Democrat. They made it maybe 2 points favorable to the Republican side. I can't remember, but it was close. But again, the current congressman didn't like that, so he bailed on his district and he bailed on his constituents and went to the next district over. So I think that's cowardly, by the way. Very cowardly.
I agree. I want to ask you this because, you know, we know that Bernie was the leader of the progressive movement in this country. He's still at 80 years old, kicking ass and taking no prisoners, still fighting, you know, for union wages. He's all over the country. He's doing stuff on the internet for union strikes around the country. And I respect that as a man his age. And it just shows the true leadership that Bernie Sanders and just truly what he really believes in. You know, he's not the president of the United States because he got rigged twice, but he's still out there fighting like he is. And, I commend him for that. But obviously, he's 80 years old. He's, maybe got a few years left in Congress as far as that goes before he probably retires. Whatever that may be, my question for you is, you're involved in all these progressive groups, talking to all these people. Who do you feel like is the leader of the progressive movement now, besides Bernie, we'll say?
Yeah, I still think Elizabeth Warren has a tremendous amount of credibility on the Senate side, and holding corporations accountable. I think she really does. On the House side, obviously AOC kind of leads the pack, right? Which I'm grateful, so incredibly grateful that she is unabashedly progressive and unabashedly will speak for her district. I think Cori Bush, look at how many millions she was able to save, their housing. That's a huge accomplishment. Jamal Bowman, Ayanna Pressley. I mean, you know, there are Rashida Tlaib, you know, there are a number of incredible progressives that do the right thing and have the courage to speak their convictions and live their convictions. Those are who I see as the next kind of the ones, you know what, let me just put it like this. What I love about Bernie is he has allowed a bench to be built underneath him.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful thing. And he has highlighted these next generation of leaders. Instead of trying to suck all the oxygen for himself, he's letting us know, this is who I think the next generation of leaders are. And that's a fabulous thing because so few people do that. They don't like the light ever to be deflected away from them. They want it all themselves. So,
you know, I was more of an AOC guy a little while ago, but I'm not as big as a fan as I used to be. I just think the tax the rich dress thing, that was kind of like Hollywoodish. You know, she's starting to go a little too Hollywood, you know. I do agree with you on Cori Bush. I think
if I could look like that in that dress, I would have worn that dress in a heartbeat.
That's fair. But I think Cori Bush is the real deal, though. I've really come to respect her. I think she's a fighter, and she tells it like it is, and she's not afraid to go against Biden. Out of all those people, I think and even Bowman now, who actually, I think, hit Biden the other day. But I think Cori Bush is the leader she's not afraid to hit Biden hard. And I respect that because you got to hit Biden. You know what I mean? I don't care if you're in the same party or not. It's just, yeah, go ahead.
I know that they want to call it Democrats in disarray. I don't look at it like that at all. It's Democrats holding us accountable, right? Let me tell you something. I actually think of accountability as a trait that we should all actually value. And for whatever reason, if it's Democrats holding other Democrats accountable, it's like, oh, don't you dare. How dare you? Well, we want the Republicans to hold Republicans accountable. Why shouldn't we hold our own accountable? And it's not saying that Biden's a bad person. He's not. He's obviously a very good person. But we need to hold people accountable. And the things that they say on the campaign trail should have some weight and some you should be able to rely on it.
So, you know, we've talked about the extreme disappointment by the Democratic Party that has the House, the Senate, and also the White House in 2021, coming up on a bloodbath year of 2022. No movement on student debt, no movement on the minimum wage, no movement on Build Back Better, no movement on even a public option, which Biden promised in the campaign. No, the COVID issues are getting worse, not better. So can you give the audience a glimmer of hope to end this interview, please?
Well, you know, I would still encourage people to stick with the progressives. Truly, if there's a progressive in a race, go vote for them. Because if you look at what the progressives have been able to do as a bloc, they really have as much as they can. If there's strength in numbers, we know that. If we elect more progressives, they have the power to hold the feet to the fire. They've done that to Nancy Pelosi, I think, quite effectively. Unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi is not, or fortunately, depending on how you look at things, she's not the president, and she doesn't have control over the Senate. They've held the feet to the fire of Chuck Schumer, quite honestly. So elect more progressives, and I think you're going to see the bending of the arc to the left side of the spectrum. We need to do that, and quite honestly, again, we can't just be like grinning, like, oh, don't talk about anything, just grit your teeth and don't talk about the things that we're not delivering on. People are going to figure out that we are not delivering for them. And again, if you just look at data points, if you look at what turns people out to vote, it's super simple. Workers' wages and weed turn people out. You know, minimum wage, giving them benefits, you know, paid family leave, that got thrown out of the, you know, Build Back Better plan. All these things that people want. Yeah. And that are hugely popular with the American population, left and right. We need more progressives so that we can hold the feet to the fire and get these things accomplished. I also would love to see campaign finance reform so that corporations, you know what, tax corporate PACs, they're tax exempt entities, tax the hell out of them at 90%. Allow 10% of the donation go to the intended recipient, take the other 90%, put it into a bowl that could truly publicly finance campaigns. Yeah. So
I agree with you. And I think that's why there's all the corruption in Congress in general, because of campaign finance reform is a joke. We need public financing for this. And if not, it's just the same old, because these people are all corrupt. Doesn't
right.
matter, Democrat, Republican, the majority, 99% are corrupt. And there's very few, like I said, you can probably count them on one hand that are not corrupted right now. And it's
Yep.
truly sad. So again, for people that are listening, this was Julie Oliver. Julie, where can people find more about Ground Game Texas, learn more
Yep.
about you in general before we end?
Yeah, so groundgametexas.org. If you squish all those words together, groundgametexas.org, that's our organization. And there's some blurbs about Mike and me on there as well. But I also have, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we didn't talk about this, but I will be monitoring campaign finance reports of the Safe Democrats in Texas. So as those are released, I will be doing videos on who's spending what in our state and whether it actually will amount to change at the electoral level, or if it's just a golf trip or a helicopter ride, which one congressional candidate had that in their campaign finance report. So stay tuned for that. That'll be on my Twitter and my Facebook.
All right, Julie Oliver, thanks so much. It was really an honor and a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.